what sort of a entity is likely to replace sapiens?
That's an impossible question to answer because given the ability to re-engineer bodies and brains and minds, then our imagination too is up for grabs. So I can tell you what sapiens like us would like to do with things like bioengineering or direct brain-computer interfaces. They would like to extend their lifespans, to be more healthy, to be more beautiful, and so forth and so on. But once you change the basic parameters of the human brain and of the human mind, I have absolutely no idea what the new kinds of entities would like to do with these technologies. I mean, so far in history, what we have seen is humans just like us changing the world outside them. So they cut down forests, they build bridges, they build factories, all kinds of things. But the real change now is that we are gaining the ability to start re-engineering not the world outside us, but the world inside us, inside the body and the brain. And by definition, you don't know where this is leading because you're still stuck with your brain. So if you can imagine what the future entities will do with the technology, they are not superior to you. They are just like you. And
what are the first ways we'll see this happening? Give us some kind of first baby steps towards kind of infiltrating the inside of the body rather than the world around us. What do we need to look out for?
It's happening on three fronts. There is biological engineering, which is taking the body as we know it, as natural selection shaped it, and basically speeding up natural selection with all kinds of help from intelligent design. And we are beginning to see all kinds of interventions on the genetic level, all kinds of interventions with the growing new organs and rejuvenating organs and so forth. So this is one front, biological engineering, which is the most conservative because it still stays with the basic building blocks of organisms as we have known them for 4 billion years. Okay, so they change a few genes and you have a different brain, but it's still an organism as we've known it. The second approach is more radical, and this is to start combining organic and inorganic stuff. So direct brain-computer interfaces, replacing organic hands with bionic hands, adding to the body a second immune system, which is not organic, but an inorganic immune system made up of millions of tiny nanorobots inside your body that diagnose cancer and eliminate all kinds of diseases and so forth. But you still, the main command and control center is still your organic brain, which is connected to all kinds of devices or computers, can serve the internet, whatever. The third and most radical way is to completely give up, completely abandon organic stuff and create completely inorganic life forms. Whether this can be done or not is an open question. The biggest open question as yet, so far, in the life sciences is the question of consciousness. We have no idea what consciousness is, what it does, how it emerges. The common assumption is that somehow the mind, consciousness, emerges from the brain, and if we hack the brain, and if we understand how billions of neurons create subjective experiences of anger and love and pain and pleasure, then there should be no barrier for recreating these kinds of experiences based on silicon and not carbon, based on computers and not brains. But this is just, at present, it's just a dogma. We are still far from really understanding consciousness, so maybe it's not like that. And maybe we'll never be able to create non-organic life forms. But more and more scientists, serious scientists, are becoming convinced that sooner or later this will happen and we'll be able to leave behind the realm of organic compounds and create completely inorganic life forms.
I've seen a couple of hands go. Maybe we should just take the questions and then we'll take them in a row. Lady at the front row, Mum, if you wouldn't mind giving us your name and first.
Hi, I'm Pia Mancini from Argentina. I have a question that you talk about markets and the state. I was wondering if you see any role in the future for the networks, and specifically, what are your thoughts on the blockchain as a mechanism to organize human cooperation at scale that maybe previously was only able to be done by states or markets? And a cheeky one, what are you hopeful about?
Okay, well, let's just see the gentleman over there and give you some time to think about that one.
Hi, I'm Marcelo Nintz from Global News TV Brazil. I've heard Mr. Jack Ma from Alibaba, his thoughts about education. That the world would need a revolution in education to be prepared for the loss of jobs to computers and robots. He talked about 800 million jobs being lost in the near future. I'd like to have your take in what needs to be done in education, because it always seems that we are educating looking at the past and not at the future. And he says that the more important things nowadays to separate clearly humans from robots, so teaching kids music, sports, and painting, let's say, to make them very different from robots. I'd like to have your say on education.
Anybody else while we're doing a round of questions? Yeah, gentleman in the front row.
From Israel. I'd love to know how you see these three sects or these three movements playing out in the near term, maybe a decade or two, something that you feel you do have some analytical visibility into.
Okay,
I mean,
so
the three ways of...
the organic mix.
Biohumanism, neurohumanism, and posthumanism.
And let's just do the gentleman in the last row, then we'll take all these. You can choose which one you want to do first.
Rick Wiles, True News, Florida, USA. In the earlier session, you said there's no intelligent design by a God in the clouds. Could you elaborate on those thoughts?
Okay, so we have blockchain, the power of networks for facilitating human cooperation. Education, revolution in education. Timeline of the 3 stages. God in the clouds, and last but not least, what makes you hopeful?
Okay.
Don't run out of time before you get to that last question, please.
Okay. So about markets and states and blockchain, I mean, basically we've been there before in the 1990s. In the great optimistic era of the internet. And then we heard the same story that, states, the market, corporations, this is old stuff. The internet will completely change the way things are happening, will create all kinds of digital communities that will replace states and corporations and markets. And as we all know, it didn't happen. What happened was that the corporations, the markets, and the states colonized cyberspace and are now becoming more and more powerful, and they now compete among themselves. It's states against corporations. And so now we have this new promise, okay, the old internet was not good enough to do it, blockchain will do it. And maybe it will happen. I mean, history is never just repeat itself. The fact that something happened last time is no guarantee that this will happen again this time. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm skeptical because the states and the market have been here for such a long time already, and they have managed to adapt to so many different new environments that I find it hard to imagine that you just need one more technological twist and they are out of the game. Some of them may become extinct, but others will adapt and take over also the new technology maybe. So this is about the promise of blockchain. About education, then yes, I mean, this is the really big question with all the talk about job loss and so forth, is it's not the absolute annihilation of jobs. There will be new jobs. The big question is whether people will be able to perform these new jobs, whether they will have the skills. Because usually when people talk today about the coming waves of automation and the creation of new jobs, what they think about is jobs that demand not specialized, but more highly proficient skills. Jobs that demand creativity and innovation and things like that. And okay, so you have these millions of jobs that demand that, but do you have the necessary education and skills to fulfill the jobs. In the previous waves of automation, let's say if you're a farm worker in 1910, and they don't need you anymore because they now have these new tractors, but there are openings in the tractor factory in Detroit. So you move from the farm to Detroit and you apply to the tractor factory, and it's a routine manual job, so you do need to learn some new skills, and you do need some time to adjust. But in principle, most farm workers were able to reinvent themselves as factory workers relatively easily. But in the next stage, in the next waves of automation, if you lost your job as a cashier or as a textile worker, and there is a new job in data analytics or in designing virtual reality games, that's going to be far more difficult. And we are not teaching young people today the necessary skills for the simple reason that nobody knows what these skills will be. We can't predict what will be the necessary skills. So the best bet is to focus on things like emotional intelligence, like mental resilience, like the ability to learn, because this will definitely be necessary. The problem here is that nobody really knows how to teach it on a massive scale. You can create a very innovative school that focuses on things like emotional intelligence and things like mental resilience. But how do you scale that for billions of people around the world? This is a big question. About the three ways in which this is going to play out. So we see it beginning to happen in different ways around us today. Genetic engineering is no longer just science fiction. I mean, every month or so, we hear about a new treatment, a new experimental method on mice or on monkeys or sometimes on people, which is being explored. And it's the same with brain-computer interfaces. Now, for example, the idea of just thinking about something and the lights go out or something appears on the computer screen, this is no longer science fiction. It's happening. Once we have a good two-way communication system, direct communication system between brains and computers, this is kind of the watershed moment. I mean, once you have a good two-way, nobody has any idea what happens after that. It's kind of like the screen comes down and a completely different show begins. For example, if you have a good two-way communication system directly between brains and computers, it also means you can connect several brains together to create an inter-brain net because it's the same system, the same communication system. And nobody has any idea what this means for things like identity. Who am I when I can access directly the brain of another person? The third way of creating completely inorganic life forms, this is still science fiction. Of course, it depends on your definition of a life form. But if you wanted to have consciousness, if you wanted to have subjective experiences, then this is still science fiction. And maybe there'll be a breakthrough in the next decade or two. Maybe it will never happen. I don't know. The fourth question was about God in the intelligent design and gods and clouds. So I was just referring to it, that the word intelligent design immediately brings to mind of many people the creationist idea that all life forms are designed by God. And sometimes people tell me, don't use the word intelligent design. But it is intelligent design, what we are about to see in the world. It's just not the intelligent design of the God of the Bible. It's the intelligent designs of human beings and increasingly of algorithms. This is why I referred to the intelligent design of clouds, of the cloud computing. That designing a life form is such a complicated thing to do that in all likelihood, no human being will be able to do it. But our algorithms may be able to do it for us. And increasingly, we'll see in more and more fields this shift in authority from humans to algorithms. So even if we keep as figureheads, the presidents and the CEOs will continue to be human beings because we don't like the idea of being ruled by algorithms. Actually, these presidents and CEOs, they will be choosing between options dictated by algorithms, often without really understanding how they came to these options and what do these options mean. So you'll still have some human being being given the option, okay, we'll do A, B, or C, but the ones really driving the show will be the algorithms that shape the options in the first place. And the last question was
before we run out of
about
time, what
yeah.
gives you hope?
That humanity has managed to overcome very big challenges in the past as well. If you look back, say, 50 years, in the 1950s, 1960s, the nuclear war was on everybody's like #1 item on the human agenda. And lots of people were convinced that humanity is not up to it, and that sooner or later the Cold War will end in a nuclear catastrophe that will annihilate all of humankind and much of the ecological system as well. And so far it didn't happen. The Cold War ended not in some huge bloodbath, but actually ended peacefully, with some eruptions here and there. But generally speaking, if you think about previous similar crises in history, it was the most peaceful transition of power, maybe, in human history, what happened at the end of the Cold War. And this was not a miracle. This was human beings making wise choices. The Soviets, the Americans, the Chinese, the Europeans, they made wise choices during the Cold War, and it ended peacefully. It gives us no guarantee that we can do the same thing with the challenges that we now face, but it does give us hope that yes, human stupidity is unlimited, but so is hopefully also human wisdom.
I'm reminded of the fact that I believe it was after the first nuclear bombs were dropped that we managed to get a treaty for the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. Yet still, I'm with you, I'm hopeful.